Why is it going to that scene next? I need to set this back up. Oh my goodness. Hello. Welcome back.
You just want to have me on air next to that music, right? That's basically that's your point, right?
Clearly,
that's your whole angle.
You know what? You're right. Wait a minute. No, technically, that's not where it should go next. It should go into the camera rotation, but it's an eCam problem. We'll figure it out after. But
don't let Doc hear you say that, because he'll come on the stream.
Doc's going to be the one to fix it for me, I hope. Oh man. Hi Heather, how are you? Welcome back everyone to Creative Briefs. It's our weekly recap of the top news and a little bit of analysis on what's going on in the creator economy. Every week we try to bring you a roundup of the latest news, some of our own insights, and occasionally and usually a deep dive onto some topic that is highly relevant to the creator economy itself. We do go live on Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and you can find out more over at created.show. It's the official show page. In addition, we are streaming right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Oh, we're not streaming on LinkedIn because I forgot to schedule it. And so hence you can't schedule it ahead of time. And we are on Twitter Spaces as well if you're choosing to listen through audio. So pick your poison, whatever is the most appropriate medium for you. In addition, we do post our show notes. We have our mailing list and all those other great things over at createdeconomy.com. It's our official site. So head over there if you want to find out more, see our upcoming guests, put your name in the hat to be on the show as well. So very excited, Ken. I know we have a ton of stuff to dive into this week. So why don't we jump right into it with the news? How you doing, by the way?
Good. How about yourself?
Now it's only been like a day and a half since our last
Well, a lot can happen in that day and a half. I mean,
the way creator economy news goes is that it all seems to dump on Thursday night to Friday morning. So
I'm pretty sure everyone's thinking like, well, let's see. Greg and Ken have the show, and you know what? Let's just throw it all out there and just dogpile all the creator news and have them fit it in within the next somehow in the next 48 hours.
I don't know how Rachel Maddow feels, because usually she'll be like, we had a whole show prepared for you today, and then blah, we have to do it. So we have to.
I need a stack of paper and just like toss it in the air. It's like, all right, here we go. We're gonna do this.
Well, welcome to this is episode 007, by the way, and we've done 15 on our other show. So that makes this is our 22nd episode in our series or adventure here in the creator economy. If you don't follow us already, we would love your follow over on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Flipboard. We're a created economy everywhere you can find us. We're trying to grow and keep delivering great content for you. So we appreciate the follow. If you would like to join our Slack, by the way, we do have a great small community of folks who are builders, some creators, and it's a chance for you to sort of interact, ask questions, be part of an ongoing focus group. So feel free to pop over there. You can take a picture of the QR code or head over to bit.ly/created-slack, and you can join us over there. Oh, wrong slide. All right, Ken, let's go to the news now.
Well, that was basically you're doing ephemeral. It's like a TikTok of the show right now. It's like, boom, done. We're good.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. See you next week. All right. So let's get into the news. Whew. Now speaking of ephemeral, let's talk about TikTok, right? So there's a new report from App Annie, who's basically an app monitoring firm, which is claiming that TikTok, there's a lot more people that are spending time on TikTok in the US and the UK versus YouTube. Now, there's a little bit of, on one hand, this is pretty interesting statistic that the average time spent per user on TikTok, it overtakes YouTube. However, there's a bit of a caveat here that App Annie's research only is focused on Android apps in the United States. Now, that doesn't account for the fact that
this research was only based on Android app?
Only based on Android apps. That's correct. So, there's you factor in all there's also iOS. There's also bigger screens in the US as well, like your iPad or your phone. I'm sorry, your TV for YouTube. And TikTok's not necessarily available on that, although Amazon's new TVs that were announced this week are supposed to support TikTok, but that's beside the point. But then you also look at what's outside the US as well. Like there's a bigger market outside the US that's ripe for YouTube, that's ripe for TikTok to take advantage of, but TikTok TikTok holds dominance in China, but then also elsewhere in the United States, YouTube has elsewhere in the world, YouTube holds greater dominance with the amount of users that they have as well. So there's some interesting other statistics as well in here, is that in this App Annie report that it's not just focused on TikTok, but it's also just focused on social apps in general, where they're saying like, while many social apps have included in-app purchases in the past, many were one-off items like sticker packs purchased from the company. Now, in-app purchases fueling the social market spend are often tied to gifting content creators during live streams. So the App Annie is making some sort of a research, some sort of I guess analysis as it relates to, you know, the currency that goes on within these platforms, such as like what Greg, what we were talking about on Wednesday during our founder roundtable, with like what Twitch has with their, I think what their bits, all their multiple ways that you can pay people on Twitch. Same thing with on YouTube and the like. So there's an interesting report from App Annie worth reading. There again with the caveat for TikTok that it's only App.
I think we should just delete this article because it's garbage. Heather and Victor are both commenting. Yeah, it's kind of a very foolish kind of approach to like try to like study anything, right? Like in America, I do think we tend to have more iPhones actually than we do Androids, but I think globally there are more Androids. So it's kind of a very weird combination to look at. I have heard this, by the way, if you don't listen to Creator Upload, they have a great podcast as well. I was just listening to it this morning. They mentioned this, that the YouTube numbers are sort of staying somewhat static, right? And the TikTok numbers continue to grow. It'll be interesting though, right? Because we did see in, you know, like when India banned TikTok, right? You know, alternatives had to pop in as well. So I don't know. Look, you likely as a creator should be paying attention to both platforms. If you're in it for the money, not necessarily like, I mean, in it for the money, but if you're planning to make money, right? YouTube is probably still a better place to have a larger audience currently, right? For just a relative to direct monetization or naturally organic recurring monetization. If you are on the TikTok side, then you sort of have to figure out how to to generate revenue from other ways. And so, but it is seemingly easier, right? To grow a big audience on TikTok. So interesting. But yeah, this was like a very poorly formed survey, to say the least.
I think that if anything, the one thing to take away from it at the very least is more the conceptual part of it, is that, look, TikTok's growing, right? And it could potentially rival YouTube in general. So definitely don't sleep on TikTok. That's just I think that's the bottom line. I think when you look at the numbers and the average time spent and everything like that, it's still very in flux. And again, I agree, like this survey is very skewed in one aspect. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt, but the overall premise behind it is there is some merit to it.
The survey can suck it, as far as I'm concerned. So our friends over at Koji, early guest of the show, Dimitri. By the way, I do some work with Koji, so just for full transparency. But speaking of which, Koji just had some great news. They were in the information, which feels like the new TechCrunch for our space, right? Like getting something featured in there. But what was interesting is that Koji's made a couple of announcements. They just recently brought in Annie Morita, I believe is her name. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Annie used to run the App Store in China, actually, right? So, and Koji's positioning has ultimately become that they are sort of like the App Store for creators. And if you're not familiar with what Koji does, it's sort of like their tagline, I believe, is like supercharge your link in bio. But fundamentally, the premise, I believe, is instead of just having static links, you could have apps that kind of live on your link in bio, which regardless of which link in bio tool you use. And furthering that relationship, what they've done is they actually rolled out now, they started to collaborate directly with creators in actually creating and shaping some of the new applications that they're putting out. You know, Dimitri's shown in the past, like that they have the ability and they move very fast to like clone and recreate sort of other capabilities more natively with better economics. They launched an app called Rares. Can you go to that previous link there, Ken?
Sure.
With Piper Raquel. She's a TikToker and YouTuber, I believe.
YouTuber, yep. 2 billion views, yeah.
Billion views, yeah. She's so fairly large. And the interesting thing is that her app that she's launched on Koji, a couple of things. One, it basically does like a pixelated version of your art. So you can like sort of share kind of like an OnlyFans model, right? Like, but not for adult content per se, right? but you can share photos or videos with your fans, and then they can unlock that content, by buying it, or by answering questions and some other things like that. So I think that that's like a powerful construct, relatively speaking. The secondary effect here, though, that I think is really interesting is that you can also then, like, any creator can come along and clone that app, actually, right? So let's say, we wanted to do behind the scenes shots of Ken's boxing match, right? We could put that out there, and then we could charge Matt $10 per picture to actually see you training. So anyone can clone that app, actually in the Koji App Store, though, and then start running their own version of Rares. And that's true for all the apps in theory, but what they're doing is getting those really firsthand insights from creators to create these apps. So super interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this does. Ken, what are your thoughts?
I think what's fascinating, I think this is you brought up this kind of like the open source type of model. Like, you can kind of recreate these things. I think that there's something easy about it, because I think what the problem with creators is that they're not necessarily developers, right? So there's a lot of ramp up time for them to get up, to kind of really set something up, right? I can't create my own version of Rares right now. I need to go find a developer. I need to, obviously plan it out and strategize and do all those type of things, right? But what you have with this is that, it's almost like with Parse and all these other companies in the past, where it's like easy onboard, right? You have this proliferation of low code and no code type of building development. So that makes it easier for anyone to really get up and running now. And so that's kind of I think that's a good thing, especially for creators who are like, okay, I want to be able to own my own app or have my own presence where people can follow me without having any of the limitations from like, TikTok or Patreon or OnlyFans or whatever. It's like, I can have it all within my own property and have my own dedicated community. So I think that's a pretty good thing. I think it's kind of, I like what you see here with Rare, have that pixelation, stickers, and text is very similar to Instagram, but then you have this, I guess, special area, right? It's like a speakeasy of sorts, right? You unlock it's a very special area that offers, a little bit more of a personal, intimate touch that you have with your fans. So, I mean, I'm kind of curious to see where this goes. I think it's a great move on Koji's part to hire someone, especially from who ran Apple's App Store in China. I mean, there's multiple aspects of that. One is the App Store aspect, which you talked about, but her background in China is going to play a big role in Koji's development, especially as the number 2 person at Koji, because China is very much at the forefront in terms of like app development and allowing people to communicate with other people, not through what we consider native, through traditional means, such as, websites or anything like that. It's all done through like messaging and all these like things like WeChat and Douyin and everything like that. So this is a good grab for Koji. Very interested to see how this accelerates things. And good luck to Dimitri and Annie.
Absolutely. Let's go to our next story, Ken.
All right. Let's talk more about influencers.
Okay. This one was mine as well. This is an interesting story. The title is a marketer got pay rates from over 3,000 influencer deals to try and figure out how much creators should charge for posts on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And the app is called Influent. It's actually from Julia Montgomery. She actually I believe she's runs an agency, an influencer agency as well. But I do think what was interesting here is ultimately, I think creator pay is one of these big question marks for the majority of the space, because what we functionally see is that she has an interesting stat in here. She said she recalled one instance working with 2 creators, each one with 1 million followers and similar engagement rates. One was charging $300 per post, while the other charged $3,000, she said. I think this is really interesting and compelling because it is very hard. Most people have a hard time negotiating. Most people have a hard time understanding their own value, right? And I think what happens here is that if you don't know better, I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, look, I guess to some degree you're being taken advantage of, but if you ask for 300 and someone says fine, then they're doing the smart thing for their business, right? And ultimately, it's on you to try to do the smart thing for your business, right? So she went and did a bit of market research, tried to aggregate some of these rates from our own clients, from other folks. I hope this database does grow over time because I think it's going to be a very useful tool for the space as a whole. But she did say just to quote something from the article, it says, here's what she found were the average rates for a post on an account with 100,000 followers based on the responses she got. Instagram, the average was $840. The median was $520. And the range was from anywhere from 0 to 5,200. Yeah, it's right there in the article too, Ken. On TikTok, she found the average was $400, with the median being 120 and the range, going up to 3,400 basically. And YouTube, it was 830, pretty close to the Instagram as an average, right? However, the median was higher at $710. And the top end was at 6,300. So I think it just shows that, again, like we were talking before, there is no industry standard. Absolutely right, Heather. I don't know how easy or hard that is, to be honest, right? There's so many factors inside of in what determines the rates. There's usually ranges, but it's very hard. There are no, you take anywhere, software programmer, any job, PR person, journalist, there's no industry standard per se. Like it's highly, jobs tend to work, I guess, right? Like where are you based? Cost of living, it becomes a factor in that. Experience is a factor. Other things like that. I think we can obviously and certainly do a better job of like having more transparency and more clarity. It also depends on the type of target, the CPMs that are relative to your space. So all these things are important factors. I don't think we should do nothing about it. We should do a lot more about it. Can we set standard rates though? I don't know. It seems a little difficult from my point of view to get to that point, but I think we can definitely do a lot more.
Well, I think it's, if you look at the different professions, so you talked about like, with, there's no specific, there's no standard rate in terms of from a journalism standpoint to the developer standpoint or whatever. Like you charge a different rate for your development, for your consultant time, right? Versus what I would charge. I mean, it's also based off of, there's a lot of complexity in there in terms of like experience, right? I think there's a lot of those professions have been around a lot longer than, the creator industry and these platforms. So if there's no standard for those professions, it'll probably be a lot longer before we start to see some sort of industry standard for here, right? I mean, I think I kind of recall, was it the now CEO of Rally penned this article on TechCrunch calling for a creator bill of rights, and that was something that we were going to
talk about. That we got to still.
That was something that we were going to dive deep into, which we will do in a future episode. But maybe maybe that some of that aspect of a standard take rate should be included there. Although I think it's like there's a lot of complexity and a lot of juggling there, right? It's like, is everyone necessarily keeping the same, right? I mean, should there be a minimum standard, right? Like almost like a minimum wage for creators? I don't know, but then that kind of gets into that whole aspect. Should there be like a universal basic income for creators? And I know that us talking about that will dive down a rabbit hole, which we don't want to get into at this point. So I think there's a lot of complexities as opposed to just simply saying, "Oh, let's have this minimum take rate." But I get to your point, to the point of the article. This is more of an observation that, look, there's a wide range. There's not a lot of transparency amongst these platforms, right? And I mean, you factor in things like what about Twitter? What about Snap? What about all these other platforms?
Well, and also platforms have different viabilities. But yeah, Heather, I think has it right. Yeah, establishing a standard will be tough, right? Since it's hard to price the value of a community. But more transparency would be awesome. Let's continue to work on it. I think we absolutely should. What do we got next, Ken?
Let's bring that back. There we go. All right. Speaking of community, ta-da! Nice little segue. I love how we have these wonderful accidental segues, right? Speaking of communities, YouTube and Twitter are in the news talking about community. I think it's like the Steve Ballmer, developer. It's like I should be jumping up and down, like community. So here's what we have with YouTube, and I think this. I'm gonna blaze through this really quickly because it's not like super significant, but it is notable. YouTube is making it easier for their creators to unlock this community posting. Now, what is community posting? Community posting is that it's like a Facebook newsfeed type of or status update that you see in that creators can post, and that you as the user, a YouTube user, will see in your feed. And it's basically a dedicated community tab on their profile. And right now, you needed to have 1,000 subscribers. And now YouTube's saying, we're going to cut that in half to 500. So, Greg, we are almost there.
Every one of you tells everyone you know to follow us on YouTube.
Exactly.
We'll be halfway there.
Exactly. Let me just, Greg, say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Halfway there.
It's like, hey, and you can subscribe right now. Smash that subscribe button right now, right? But no, okay. So that's in the short. I think it's a nice move. It allows more engagement for creators to interact with their fans as opposed to just kind of putting out content and you know there's a different way of communicating. I think it's a nice move. All right, now on the other hand, Twitter's like earlier in the week saying, hey, we're going to launch this new service called Communities. It's an invite only, and it's a take on Facebook groups and Reddit, and it basically consolidates all these tweets in this group around a specific topic. So you can have things such as, you know, app development, around the Matrix movie, around you know, Ted Lasso, you know, the sports or whatever. And it's, I mean, think of it like Facebook groups on Twitter. That's basically the gist of it. What could possibly go wrong? A lot of things on Twitter.
From what I understand, this seems like a reasonable idea.
It's a reasonable idea. Look, I think what Twitter's doing is they're redefining what they are in for the past decade or so, right? Twitter at one point has always been, what are you doing? What's happening, right? It's just been very much a 140, 280 character post. Now they're branching off into more ways to tweet, to talk to people with Twitter Spaces, which we're on now, assuming we didn't get booted off. You can communicate with outside of this, off of the non foundational tweet with review, with a newsletter. You know, now you can do it with communities as well. So the kind of really branching off and doing more communities. Before there was no real way to interact with like-minded or like-tweeted people without following a hashtag or following them, following their account. So this makes it a little bit easier. So folks such as like Heather, if she opted to be be active on Twitter, which I know she is, but I mean, if she wanted to dedicate more of her time to that, right? For example, hi Heather, wanted a nice little call out because you're here. This allows you to kind of like interact with them off your platform, so you're not necessarily on a wholly dedicated to like one single platform. It's a nice. Twitter just wants more creators on their platform.
Yeah, Heather has a good point here, Ken. I guess, is it like kind of like a better version of Lists?
It is, yes. So List is very much like you organize the people yourselves, right? But you're the only one that's going to be able to see that list or be able to interact with that list. Really, I mean, like other people, I can see, unless you can make it private or whatever. But Communities, it's like, it really is more.
This is
multi-directional.
Choosing to be in it as opposed to a list where I choose who's on it, kind of.
Yeah, you can be an active participant in a community versus list where you're like, you know, Greg, you'd have to add me to that list. I'm only able to observe what's happening on that list, but only people that are curating it is the owner of said list.
Right. Gotcha.
So Communities, anyone who has the access to the tool could add themselves to this. And could this also, you know, like, here you go. So starting this week, you can have things like Astro Twitter, Dog Twitter, which is, I really want to get access to that. You know,
you have to have a dog, Ken.
Somebody here have a dog that I can borrow for a long time.
Dogs are a new NFT. Like, you need to.
Yeah, does technically that count? I mean,
you need to into paw so you can get in.
So, but here's the caveat: before you can get, even though it's Communities is invite only, it's only available you can only be accessed through iOS right now. if you have access through Android, you'll be able to only read what the tweets now. You won't be able to post to a community. So it's right there.
Yeah, I think this is I do like this idea, and I think Facebook groups, by the way, is a very good product, right? Like it is deeply entrenched. There are folks with hundreds of thousands of people in groups. So I think if they can't solve the migration issue, I mean, obviously there are vibrant communities of people in the Twitter ecosystem as well, that they can aggregate and dry up into sort of a common place. That's probably a good thing. But I do think like the secret sauce here may be to figure out like how to make some of those Facebook groups that are on Facebook, for the sake of there not being another tool, maybe also migrate. So very interesting though. What do we got next, Ken?
All right. Talking about unicorns here. Yeah, I know. Real short, sweet. Last week, the information had this article around the unicorns being those startups that are valued over $1 billion. And here's some funding news. Live shopping startup Whatnot raises at a 1.5 billion valuation. How much did they raise specifically in their funding round? They don't disclose. But TLDR, they joined the likes of Patreon, Cameo, Clubhouse as startups that have over $1 billion in valuation, right? And then you get other companies such as Splice and Substack, which are approaching that as well. I mean, this is I think we shouldn't be surprised to see like Cameo and Patreon and Clubhouse in that group, so if you will. I know some people will disagree about Clubhouse being in there, but the valuation is at top more than 4 billion. But this is notable that there are a lot more. There's a lot more of a pickup in terms of the creator economy startups. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. We do have another article later, but our deep dive is going to be on commerce, so we'll probably loop back to that.
Yeah.
Just getting to our next article. This is really interesting. It's the TikTok and Snap alums are launching an app called Make It, which is a social music creation app. There's an article over on TechCrunch. They've raised $4 million in seed funding. Very interesting team, obviously very seasoned in the space. What I was really blown away by, though, was just that like it's collaborative music, right? And I see so many interesting things here. It really pulls on sort of like remix culture. But the idea is that you basically can co-create or riff on audio or music content being created by other folks. And then those remixes serve potentially the value of helping you earn new revenue, right? The only thing I didn't see in particular here, right, they sort of allude to the monetization, and they say that there's a 50-50 split, except it wasn't clear how they enforce this actually, because there is no native e-commerce. So it's not like people buy those tracks or songs inside of the app currently, at least. It seems like you would do this outside. Yeah, Heather's saying it's like duets, but with an original music, which is pretty interesting, I do think. Yeah. So this app is sort of taking like that duets kind of feature and some of what made TikTok really popular, I think, which is the music, right? And saying like, hey, what if we could make our own music and build and create something new? And then those new things that get created actually have like some other lasting value, some lasting monetary value. As I've now got crypto brain and NFT brain as well, like I also see this potentially having some opportunities to maybe persist out. Folks collaborating to create a set, maybe 20, 30, 50 things. Imagine minting some of this original music out as NFTs and then actually having like royalties that pay in perpetuity for that creator, right? Because you can do downline payments. So it's a really powerful concept. I love the idea of this. And I've seen a few startups in the past that are doing collaborative music making, like some much more lower level, like kind of like distributed Ableton style experiences where like different people could be playing instruments or feeding MIDI into it. But this was just a whole other beast. It's an app that runs in the App Store, like runs on your phone, sort of has like kind of like a stories kind of feel to it or a TikTok kind of feel to it, but it's collaborative music making. So I just think this is interesting to watch. I haven't tried it yet, but because I have no music abilities whatsoever. But I would like to, give this a go and just understand and learn more about this. So yeah, pretty cool.
But so Greg, I mean, I mean, you look at what you have with TikTok, right? I think what's fascinating about TikTok is that you can create it. There's a lot of remixes, right? Dance. There's a lot of remixes to music videos or music. So in a sense, this is what you talk about with like what Heather's talking about with duet, and what you're talking about with it has some TikTok-esque type of similarities. Like I see that as well, minus the actual dancing part here, right? I mean, this is all. I think you see what people are seeing is that there's success in terms of remixing in general. TikTok certainly has accelerated that trend. So, I mean, will we see more of these type of remixing apps in general, right? I mean, soon could we see like remixing of posts, remixing of
the remix idea, right? Kojis are remixable apps. What's this app called again? Make It.
Make It. What? Yeah, I mean, of course,
it's like a horrible domain name. It's like mayk.it.
Yeah.
But Make It is remixing music. A big part of TikTok was some of this remix ability as well, right? So I do think this is an abstraction above the raw materials, right? And to that end, and I think there's something really powerful here, because creativity is something that almost everyone has in varying ways, but we sometimes get paralyzed by our lack of access to the tools, right? For example, if you're like, one of my interests that I have no business being interested in is like creating electronic music. I watch a ton of videos on YouTube about this, but I don't know how to play an instrument. But I love like that there is now a software abstraction to create music without actually knowing how to play, not necessarily having to know how to play an instrument. That gives me the hope of maybe trying to do it someday, right? Yeah. Whereas I might not be like, yeah, I'm going to pick up the guitar now, right? Or a piano now, like as a 46-year-old.
At some point you forget it. It's like you just go by the decades. You don't the specific number here.
You know what I mean? I forgot. I was rounding to it because my birthday's soon. But you see what I mean? And so I do feel like these levels of abstraction do create opportunities for people to be more expressive with their creativity.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because you look at, as we talk about, hey, there's some interesting startups that are coming out, and we highlight them, right? Like, for example, Make It. First of all, I'm sure they're gonna have an issue from an SEO standpoint, right? I mean, it's like that again. That domain is I don't know how you're gonna promote that. Anyways, but you look at the downriver aspect, right? What the emergence of new creators that will flourish because of this, that could flourish because of this, because you're going to be looking at, like, to your point, Greg, is like, oh, I like music, but I don't play an instrument, or I don't really have the capabilities to go out and buy the necessary equipment to do it. I just need something simple to do it, to create. This could make that happen. And so therefore it's like, now I can become a creator by, collaborating with other people and having an easy way to do it. Right. It's almost like, hey, I want to be able to do post-processing for my photos, but I don't know how to do all the color correction. And voila, here comes apps like Instagram, like Snapseed, and Lightroom, and all these other things that make it super simple for me to do it. That lowers that barrier to entry for these creators, right? So
Victor has a great analogy here, actually, Ken. It's just like the low code, no code musical tools.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a real popular theme in the creator economy, is the low code or no code.
And true story, like one of the places I first seen and learned about Ableton was actually Victor's niece. She's been doing this for ages now.
Nice.
And she's really good at it. And, it's really interesting to just see how this space is moving very quickly. All right. Actually, speaking, since I did mention NFTs, Ken, why don't you jump into this a little bit here?
Hey, what are you doing? Stop putting Victor on the screen. Victor never wants to leave the screen. All right. So again, speaking of NFT, my goodness, we don't plan this at all. It just winds up having these amazing segues here. So Dyspo, which is created by YouTuber, which was co-created by YouTuber David Dobrik, is looking at potentially allowing people to sell their photos taken from the app as an NFT. I think this is only like an exploratory feature right now. There's no timeline for when this would happen. There's no infrastructure or anything like that. So let's don't everyone download Dyspo all at once and hope to start making your money off of your photos, because
I think
that's
a lot of
not
people
happening
got
quite
turned
yet.
off of Dyspo after some of the stuff that happened also.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff that's happened with Dyspo, specifically with David Dobrik. There's issues with the people on some people on his crew who have been accused of sexual abuse or harassment crimes. So, but we won't get into that.
Obviously, those are very serious things.
Yeah.
Yes, relative to this topic, though.
Oh, absolutely. And you can go certainly do your research on this.
Still, this potential, however, right? Yeah. Again, of how the Web3 sort of decentralized land is overlapping, right? Again, as the means of production and creation do lower, as people can be more inventive and creative, creating marketplaces and economics around it seems to be like where we're moving to very, very quickly.
Yeah. And look, this doesn't necessarily, the Dyspo is not necessarily the focus of it. It's the background behind it, is the fact that you're going to be able to, could they turn photos into NFTs? Could a platform be help users turn their photos into NFTs? Like this could be with Snap. This could be with Instagram. This could be with, like Google or Apple, whatever, right? It doesn't have to be Dyspo. It just happens to be, that's the focus of this article.
But they are trying it, and hats off to them trying to give it a shot.
And I think it's a great move for that to happen, for anyone to explore that, because NFTs are all about, the creative art behind a photo, right? Not everyone can design, not everyone can draw and illustrate. I can take great photos. Maybe I want to take a nice photo of, the Space Needle or Golden Gate Bridge. I have a bunch of photos I've taken over the course of my lifetime I think are great that I frame up, but maybe I want to sell those, right? And that could be a nice little thing to do, to be able to easily turn that into NFTs. Right now, there's the process to do that is a little bewildering to me.
Oh, it's crazy. Forget it. Yeah. Like it's not even bewildering. It's like complete nonsense. And it's like the Wild West stuff.
I almost equate this right now to Square, to Commerce startup Square going into Bitcoin. That's kind of like the equivalent. Like it's a little bit like, whoa, it's out there, but there's some possibilities there. That's kind of where I state this right now.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
our last article before we dive in.
I'm hungry. Talk about Chipotle.
Yeah. So, Chipotle used to be one of my clients at Shoot. And they've always been a leader sort of, I think, in testing social media and trying to leverage it in new and interesting ways. Just a quick mention here that they've now launched what they call sort of their, I forgot the name of it. It's called the Creator Class. And it is basically like a brand ambassador program on the TikTok side. I think there's a couple of interesting things here, though, that are worth like mentioning. One is that the way that they found the folks for this program were that they were looking for people who organically mentioned Chipotle. So it just proves that I think like your actual true care and attention on something, may have some real value. And so, to the extent that everyone out there is talking about the things that they truly care about, I commend you and hats off. And hopefully it leads to bigger and better opportunities. The thing that the creator class itself is sort of tapping into, and just to read from the article here, it says the company's first ever creator class will get tapped for future sponsorship deals when a new menu item or other marketing campaign pops up. They'll also have access to a list of ambassador perks like free food, catered meals, burrito promo codes they can share with followers, and the option to visit the company's test kitchen or join paid content strategy sessions with the Chipotle team in a consultant-like role. Now, this is like so much of what I've always dreamed and hoped like that we would have as the interaction model between brands and creators. It is great rewards for your audience. It is being utilized for your insights and your leverage. And it is also being maximizing sort of your reach and the breadth of your audience itself as well. So I think like this is, now my only beef with this is that there's only like 15 of them like sort of in this program. I wish it was like 500 or 1,000 people. But hopefully they can grow this into something larger. But I do hope that more brands start to see the world and creators for all these various roles and functions that they have, because I think there's tremendous value tapped up inside of the brain of every creator out there, especially someone who's gotten to scale, right? Like you figured out a lot of things to be able to get to where you are. And so I do hope that this program does expand over time for sure.
I kind of sort of want this, I don't know, this badge, this placard,
I don't know what that is.
I think it's like, well, it basically is a placard with the Chipotle logo and the creator and the words and a badge calling Creator Class 2022, and then they have the Chipotle plastic fork that you would get when you go into the restaurant, right? Yeah. With the word creator embedded ingrained on the handle of said plastic fork. I mean, it's almost like that's like a badge of honor in a way if you're a fan of Chipotle. It's like saying like, hey, you've hit like, what was it, like that you got that YouTube play button little thing, right? When it's like a nice little achievement. I don't know, it's nice little status symbol. I mean,
yeah, I mean, like when we were Clout and you try to create something special, yeah, right? Like, and something that felt exclusive. I think, who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
Right? I think, now I will say, like, yeah, Heather says like the YouTube play button. Yeah. I would say one of the things that I did find interesting is that I haven't heard about as many brand ambassador programs. I know they're out there. They used to feel like they got more attention in the past, and it just feels like a little bit not as visible.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that companies will continue to try to innovate here as well.
Yeah, I know we've talked about a bunch of these platforms, whether they're launching funds or launching some sort of a pseudo accelerator type of program. It's like they're basically throwing money at them, right? And to kind of like, hey, go off and do it. I think like there was one with, I think it was like Snap that we're talking about a few weeks ago, which would allow you to work with their creative team. But there was nothing like this type of tangible these tchotchke type of badges that you would get as a result of it. I mean, I'm not saying like brands should be giving creators these type of things. I mean, it's a nice little status thing that might be useful for them, but
that's not the point though, I think, right?
It's a no, absolutely not. I mean, but again, it's more the vanity, right? It's like, hey, I participated in this. It's like, it's not like a paper certificate. It's like that YouTube play button version for whatever brand, blah, blah, blah. Right. Like for example, if you do it United, you get the little, small little airplane. You remember when you're a kid and you flew, the pilot would come by and give you like the little plastic wings or, the toy airplane. So, maybe that's just me. Anyways, moving on to our deep dive here, Greg.
So, yeah, I think one of the themes. So we decide the deep dive topic kind of last minute usually, but this week, a couple of times commerce has come up, and also I think on Wednesday's show, if you missed that, feel free to head over to our YouTube to catch it, or our website. But one of the topics that did come up when we spent some time chatting was just about like what the future of what I'm just calling creator commerce is, right? And how creators can leverage and further advance sort of like the e-commerce activities. And I think it is obviously provides a number of different things and directed paths. There's a great article out by Shopify on the creator economy, which Ken has up now. I've tweeted, by the way, for everyone listening in the space, I've tweeted out all the links to the articles already. So feel free to check the nest for the links. But, Shopify sort of takes a stab at sort of interviewing a number of people from across the ecosystem to sort of get their take and their input and feelings about things. There are a lot of notable quotes in this article, and I think like to recap what we kind of covered on Wednesday, it feels like e-commerce is coming quickly, right? I think previously we didn't have e-commerce at all inside of the creator native toolkits, or like very, very accidental or indirect pathways to it, right? Affiliate links, et cetera. Instagram rolled out a while ago and tested sort of their own kind of products, and now they have their affiliate product sales. We know Matt from FamePic's been testing that, and it's been working pretty well. Shopify and TikTok inked a deal that we talked about, I believe, last week. In the same domain, basically allowing the connectivity of like your Shopify store directly to sort of like your TikTok account. Now, the native platforms, I think they have a tremendous opportunity. Obviously, what also Amazon Live, right? Was that last week also? But Amazon Live has been growing, and they're trying to draw more creators into the fold there to actually do more QVC style stuff. I think what the other platforms are doing personally is a lot more interesting than sort of the Amazon style thing. But I guess there's obviously still a place for the Amazon style thing. Like if I was to guess, like Think Media is probably closer to the QVC side these days, and so much of their content that's not a dig. Versus like a Heather or a Tom Buck, which may casually and passionately review things that they like. Heather Ramirez and Tom Buck, right? Like our friends, I think they more passionately talk about products, and they sell, but not through selling, right? Like they sell because they're passionate talking about it. For me personally, I lean more that way. That feels more aligned with the creators I know, love, and respect. I don't think most creators want to get up and performatively try to sell things, right? And in fact, that's why I think oftentimes a lot of the sponsorship opportunities have not been great for creators, because you could tell they're like switching into this other modality, and there's something somewhat unnatural about it for a lot of folks. So yeah, I don't know if you had any highlights or thoughts from this article, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, this is almost like a great deep dive, although there's a little bit of a ulterior motive for Shopify, right? I mean, it's like, okay, so breaking this down, the premise, the actual title of this. Let me scroll up here. Come on, internet. There we go. It's called Creators, It's Time to Protect Your Independence, right? And I'll just put that back on the screen. There you go. So it's Creators, It's Time to Protect Your Independence. This is a 14-minute read. That's what they're saying. It's like a 14 minutes to read it. It's a great read, right? Don't get me wrong. I think what they have, Shopify has a lot of expertise in it. And the takeaway I got from this is echoes what our friend Li Jin has been talking about and posting on Twitter. It's like, look, creators, it's time to own your presence, own your own space, right? It's don't stop renting from Twitter, from YouTube, from TikTok, blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. And I get that, I get, that's kind of what I take away from there. And from what Shopify is suggesting is that you don't, specifically from a shopping standpoint, is don't, make yourself beholden. If you're going to sell any merchandise of whatever sorts, it could be through brands, it could be your own merchandise, whatever. Don't just give it don't keep renting from Instagram. Don't keep renting from Amazon. Don't keep renting from Facebook or YouTube or whoever is going to facilitate it. Like, own your own marketplace, own your own shopping experience, right? Don't do a pop-up store. Like, own your own actual digital brick and mortar. And Shopify's like, hey, we can do that because we're a place for creators, for independent people. So that's the ulterior motive. It's like Shopify wants more people on their platform, but they also have some true value in what they're saying. Is like, look, we support these independent things, as opposed to, there's been a lot of grief with Amazon and Facebook and so on and so forth, right? You're kind of like, do you necessarily want to do that? But then, as we talked about on Wednesday with our great founders roundtable, it's like, what is more important to people? Is it the network effect that you get by like saying, I want to sell merchandise on Instagram versus I want to sell merchandise have my merchandise sold through Shopify, but you lack that network effect of Instagram, that native network effect, right? Sure, there's nothing to stop you to say like, hey, I can set up shop on Shopify and advertise on Instagram and so on and so forth. Plenty of people do it, but I think people want something a little bit more seamless of an interaction, less friction to be able to maximize their money. And maybe they're not thinking about, oh, let me, I can't manage both of these type of things. So I think that there's an interesting paradox at play here, a little bit of a debate between, mental debate. Like, where do you want to go? But I see what they're saying in this report, and there's a lot more to dive into this report. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I do think this article is somewhat anthropological almost, right? Like, because it does go sort of like through the history of creators. But I think where they end up is there's two parts to this conversation. right? One is, should creators be building their own independent audience? Absolutely. Been saying that for basically like 6 years now. And I think I even said before, if you aren't doing that, you're an idiot, right? Like there's just no other way to describe your behavior, unless you just don't care about it. If you don't care about it, that's totally fine as far as I'm concerned. If you actually want to build a business or even a job out of this, a career out of this, you need to own your audience to the best extent possible. And you need to start to recognize the platforms as channels that help generate leads for that audience, that community, or whatever you're going to do with it, that customer base, right? One of the things they point out, though, so this is sort of this argument about the audience is sort of orthogonal from whether or not you can do commerce, right? Because you can still do commerce with the audience you have, even if it's rented somewhere else. Right now, there are constraints. Obviously, it's not it's not an even field or playing field there, right? Instagram makes it really, really challenging for you to drive commerce, right? Because like you have to use their direct stuff, at least if you want the frictionless sort of pathways that they provide. If not, it's going to be link in bio off to like a store, or it's going to be a link from your link in bio to a store. YouTube, a little easier, right? Like you can have links in your descriptions, etc., right? Like, so there's a little bit of bigger opportunity. Obviously, Amazon, straight up, you can just sell whatever you want, right? Like, and you're going to earn affiliate money. You're not going to necessarily earn the direct revenue, right? So it's a hodgepodge of solutions today relative to like how much commerce you can actually generate. I would still argue, though, that it's still, at least relative today, not because more creators can't sell earlier. It's just that it tends to be a numbers game. And so if you're rich with audience, it tends to be easier to drive meaningful sales, right? Unless you're selling a very high ticket item and low volume sales is viable, right? If you want to sell 1,000 of a thing, you probably need 10,000, 100,000 people in your audience potentially to consume it. This is what one of the stats they quoted in here was that from that Influencer Marketing Hub research, that only 5% of creators actually listed starting their own brand as something they do. Now, there's a lot of friction in starting your own brand. That friction is being reduced every day as well. Kind of the low code. What was that company, Ken, with the P that does the brands? They build branded products, Petra or something like that.
Oh God, I can't remember. There's so many of these type of
there's
things.
One that we just mentioned them a few weeks ago, but either way, like there's a company that does like helps creators develop brand. There's drop shipping, which is another way for creators to sell products. There are warehouses and other kinds of people who produce products for you, right? So there's a lot of ways for creators to get into products that they want to sell. Obviously, there's still merch, which is another thing you can do. But it takes a bit of focus. It takes a bit of attention. It also takes a bit about understanding yourself and then understanding your audience to know what you can do. Because for every blowout hit that there's plenty of failures littering, the graveyard as well.
Yep. No, and you're right. And what we have on the screen now is Greg, what you're talking about, that statistic. I'm not surprised by this, stat. We've covered this. I think we've actually covered this report from the Influencer Marketing Hub. Earlier in our show weeks ago. That's right. It's like there's a lot more money is going is generated from brand deals. It's still very disproportionate. There's a lot more opportunity for people that want to start their own brand, that may want to do affiliate links and so on and so forth. But obviously the maximize the opportunity is with brands, because that's where the deep pockets are if you are successful in doing that. But this report also dives further down the rabbit hole of the creator economy, though it is all about, as we're talking about from a shopping aspect, like the whole philosophy of owning your independence. I mean, what Shopify is looking at here is like, looks at the pitfalls of platforms that we talked about. They're the new landlords as well. And there's a nice little quote from Samir, half of the Colin and Samir group, which is very much quoted in this report. Social platforms can shift at any moment, and we just have to plan for that. That's a part of the game that we're playing.
Actually, there's a quote from Hugo. I don't remember if it's above or below that one, Ken, but it's also really good.
Yeah, I'll look for that. Oh, there is. There's a big fracture in trust between institutions and individuals. And as soon as something becomes a little bit big, it starts to behave like an institution. So, Greg, let me ask you this: like, for somebody that, as a builder, and as somebody who's interacted directly with big tech, these big platforms, I mean, you have a very similar relationship to creators, right?
Yeah.
That have to interact with this, like very much what Samir was talking about. How do you interact with that? I mean, it's like, it's on one hand, it's a life or death situation, for a survival situation for a startup, when company like Instagram changes their API based on what they think is best, right? Because then it could totally destroy your business model. But how do creators, have to deal with that, up and coming creators? Like, how, like,
look, there is no easy answer here. My company was almost undone by Instagram changing their API, right? Or changing the rules of the game. So I feel, I know that pain up close and personal. I look at it as the cost of doing business. And I think, like, if we, one of the phrases they use in this article is that platforms are the new landlords. Okay, great. Then it's the rent, right? And it's a reasonable point of view, right? Like, you are getting something in return for what you pay them, right? And it's not directly money out of your pocket. Like, that's a way different kind of cost center, right? When it's like, no, how about this? You pay me as YouTube $1,000 a month and take all the risk that you won't make anything back. This is not a terrible, I mean, like, granted, everything can be improved, but this is not the worst situation ever, right? It's performative, right? Like, it's based on performance. You still get to use YouTube regardless, right? Like, when you want to rent an office, you don't get to decide, wait till the end of the month to see how much money you make, right? To pay it. You pay it up front. You take on that, you bear the cost up front. I do think, like, as Colin and Samir point out, I think that's just the rule of the game, the rules of the game, right? Like, this is a channel for acquiring new customers, new audience, right? And if you look at it from that point of view, then you say, great, is this tax worth it? Maybe it's not, right? Maybe you don't have the tools, the resource to use a marketing channel to generate leads, then don't use it. Like, YouTube isn't a good fit for you, don't use it. TikTok's not a good fit for you, don't use it, right? Maybe the type of customer you get from that platform is not good, don't use it, right? So you have to just adapt. I think, like, this, I think, is the best frame of mind that a creator can have. We are entrepreneurs. These are service providers that help us get to where we're going. And there's an inherent tax or cost associated with using those tools. You don't get to use Salesforce for free, right? But if you think Salesforce is going to create a lot of value for you, you pay out of pocket. Now, we are moving to a place where more and more creators, as they build that audience, hold that audience, own that audience, can help set the rules for how they monetize from those people in an entirely different way than the previous generation of tools. And that's okay. That may be the way that we want to go. It may not be the way that you want to go. Some people may not want to take on all of that work. And this is still a better business model as an entrepreneur for me to just work with these channels, have my leads delivered to me, right? And I'll pay the commission to the salesperson, basically, right? When we had sales teams, we pay commissions to our salespeople. I don't begrudge paying my salespeople a commission because they're out there doing the work, working a deal till it closes, and delivering dollars to the company. That's how it works, right? Just like I don't own everything that person does, right? So if you can make money outside, I don't have any stake in that. So I think, and this article, I think, does a good job. It actually points out that creators are entrepreneurs. And, like, Hugo has this great quote, and we do have to go, because we're at time, but he says, a startup is an organization that scales. A creator is an individual that scales, right? It's the same DNA. And I think that if we start to really own and step into that concept, I think we can get past all of this, like, victimology and backwards lookingness, right? Like, that has dominated too much of the conversation as far as I'm concerned. Talking about what the platforms who's invested over the course of 10 years, everyone invested, creators invested time, but the platforms also invested to get to that size, and then blaming them now for being what they are, that's not going to get us anywhere, right? Like, Google isn't going to fundamentally change its business model. They're still going to sell ads, right? And they're still going to want a percentage of the ads they sell. Now, they may tweak that number, but there's always going to be people who complain that it's too much. If you have a complaint, go invest your time and energy with the people who are doing it the way you think it should be. Don't complain about the other business model, however, right? That business model is here because it is meaningful and it is work to create, as Matt pointed out. The entire creator class that we know today only exists because of those platforms. So there's no point in arguing with what they have done. Now we can try to change what they're going to do. We can invest our time and energy in new ways to do it. And you can step out on your own and invest in your own ability to do things for yourself.
So, I mean, I think in short, definitely read this great report from Shopify. There's a lot of points that that Greg has made that's in there. I'm surprised they didn't reach out to you, Greg, to talk to you about this, because there's a lot of things such as platforms, being a landlord, creators being an entrepreneur, owning your own independence and shopping and everything like that. And there's a lot of things such as the creator tech stack. We're talking about low code and no code, which has been a great theme for this week. Is something that we should probably bring someone on the show to help explain further. So there's a great point. 14-minute read, shouldn't take up too much time. Worth checking out. And I think that'll wrap up our deep dive for this week.
All right. Well, we're sad to have to go. By the way, I just did see breaking news that a judge has ordered Apple to change their practices. So everyone go read around. I'm sure you will find something interesting on that as well. Ken, as usual, great time. Let's head on out of here. But it was good. We'll see you all on Wednesday. We do have a lot of great guests coming up still. Head over to creativeeconomy.com/guest list if you want to figure out who's on next. And with that, we will see you soon.
Peace.